Hello.
Is it,
Hello.
Yeah, same thing.
would she not have the mic?
Is it turned on your headset? On your earbuds?
It's not an, it's either in or out. Hello. Hello.
Is your audio on?
Hello.
Did you unmute you? Yeah.
Still no?
No.
Come on.
No, all we're hearing is just echo in the room.
Hello.
I don't think our headphones are working.
Hello.
Do you have another pair?
We wouldn't have one with the mic, but you can use a headset. Mic on your Chromebook.
Oh, and that won't. Echo.
These fashionable babies.
See, that sort of blends in with your hair, though.
I know, it keeps it under control, I thought.
That's a job.
It's like you don't have your
You
mic
have
on.
no idea.
Jack's the same thing with you. It blends right into your hair.
Yeah, yeah. I should be in a gray room.
Yeah, it keeps going on and off, but now it's on. Hello.
No.
Hello.
Diane offered.
Dana, would you mind mute maybe the third time?
I was for a hot second.
You want these?
It's so weird. I use these all the time. I don't know why.
Did you look on that?
No, I thought you were serious.
Never.
Hello. 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 That'll do it. Hello. Right. Okay. Hello. 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 Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I guess we're ready. I think. Okay. Are we live? Everyone's watching this. Fantastic. Okay. Hi there. Let's just start staying in my ear. Okay. So, call this meeting to order at 7:05. Members present physically, myself, Dana Powers. I am hearing myself echo. Can you guys hear that? Yes.
What does that mean?
Because you're here in person and you're also hearing the second version in your ear.
Okay. What if I take it off
Your
now?
jack.
Or, so other people's mics are on while this is going on now. Okay. So everyone has to have their mics off unless they're talking, and because we're so close. That's why.
All right, let me keep trying. Oh, here it is. Oh my gosh. This is the best board meeting ever. Okay. All right, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So, members present physically, myself, Lisa Hines, Steve Brown, Nick Poloni, remotely, Jack Nicolai. Nobody's absent. Administration present physically. We have Connie Valenza. Does it matter? Okay, and then remotely, who's in that room? Do we know? Does it matter? Susan, Eileen, and Ryan are all in the LGI. And Judy. They're all just remote. Okay, doesn't matter if they're here or not. Okay. And then visitors, if you are present, please make sure that you've signed in at the door. And then if you could join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ooh. Pledge allegiance to the United States of America, to the Republic, for which we stand, one nation, God, peacefully, liberty and justice. Thank you. Okay. Approval on the agenda. These are not staying in my ears. Amazing.
I motion to approve the agenda as printed.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
Awesome. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, shoot. Jack?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Lisa? And Dana, aye. Motion carries. President's report. Okay, so last time we talked about committees. What I'd like to do is keep them as they are, having Jack fill Shane/Ted's role. And then over the summer, we're going to, Connie will put the official name on, but something along the lines of, what do you want to call it? Like a...
Well, I think we'll just talk about the committee structure in general and see if there are some committees that we want to combine, to look at kind of different options with those, and if all of the committees are still viable, who's on those committees and how often we meet, and do that this summer as a full board.
Perfect. Okay, so does that sound, it's kind of strange to see you guys here and then here. Is that good?
Yep.
Good? Okay.
Yep.
Great. So that'll just be a month or two while we get that worked out, and then we'll go from there. So instead of moving things around, it'd be easier just to do it that way, and then there'll be more information for everyone else coming up after we have that meeting. I think that's all I have. Was I supposed to talk about anything else? I think so. Okay. Go ahead, student staff.
So, staff member spotlight. At this meeting, I'd like to recognize our Arbor Food staff that have been incredibly responsive and hardworking to roll out our free school breakfast and lunch drive-through program. Robin Eisen has been the in-charge person, but Dawn Knapp and Chris Schumacher really helped out setting up the lunches and the breakfasts and getting them all prepared. We're averaging about 500 meals a day right now that we're sending out to families. So it's been outstandingly successful, I think very helpful for the families in the community that are in need. And so we're really excited about that, but it would not be possible if it weren't for these Arbor employees. So kudos to them and a huge thank you on behalf of our school district community.
That's awesome. Thanks, guys. Clerk's report. Steve, do you have any correspondence?
There is one piece of correspondence from CISA 2 from Nancy Thompson, chairperson of the Board of Control, indicating that there will be the CISA 2 conference. It'll be done virtually. It'll be taking place on Tuesday, June the 16th. And I'm on the Board of Control, so I will be there, and this will be done, as I said, remotely. I think they may have some people there live if they wish to be, and this will be held at the Whitewater Innovation Center in Whitewater. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay. Treasurer's report, Lisa.
Okay, we have a treasurer's report dated April of 2020. A general fund cash account at $817,294.58. Credit cards, $7,688. The EBC Flex and HRA cash account, $6,443.79. Capital Improvement Fund, $13,071.43. Petty cash, $400. The LGIP long-term debt at $1,565,799.36 for a grand asset total $2,410,697.16. So I move to approve the treasurer's report dated April of 2020 for a grand asset total of $2,410,697.16.
Second, Nick Maloney.
So, all those in favor? Lisa,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
and Steve,
Aye.
and Dana, aye. Motion carries. And then our accounts payable by either check or vendor.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, you put that up there. That's very nice. Okay, I move to approve the accounts payable bills dated April 25th through May 22nd, 2020. From check number 69159 through check number 201900652 for a total of $540,899.33. Oh, you put that up there.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
That's very nice.
Lisa,
Okay, I move to
Aye.
approve the accounts payable bills dated.
Jack,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
and Dana, aye. Motion carries. And then we have the minutes from last month's board meeting. Oh, here we go.
I motion to approve the minutes of the special school board meeting dated 4/28/2020 as printed and or amended.
So moved.
Lisa,
Jack
aye.
Nicolai, second.
Nick,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Dana, aye. Motion carries. Next. Anybody?
I motion to approve the minutes of the regular school board meeting dated 4/28/2020 as printed and or amended.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
Lisa,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Dana, motion carries. And then, do we have one more? There's one more minutes on the agenda, but
Was it the committee?
Committee.
oh, so we don't need to. Okay, got it. Okay, so public comments time. Did we receive any? Nope. Okay. Action items. Connie, go ahead.
So we have a resignation of a physical education teacher. That would be John Stewart. He's been a part of the Salem family for 23 years and is seeking a change. Obviously, these are different times in education, so he's looking for a change. The recommendation would be to consider the resignation request effective the end of the 2019-2020 school year as presented, and express gratitude for years of service to the district.
Nobody wants this one.
Jack Nicolai, I move to reluctantly accept the letter as written.
That's hard.
You.
You can't hear me?
Jack was making the motion.
I move to reluctantly accept the letter as written.
So moved.
Lisa,
Steve
aye.
Brown.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Jack,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
and then myself, aye. Go ahead, Lisa. I know you were talking. You will be my viewers we're talking about.
Oh, nobody heard that. Oh, yeah, just we're thanking John for his service on amazing run that you had here. We're going to miss you. You've meant so much to the Salem community and to the kids, and we wish you luck.
As a
And
former-
John, if you're listening, I need you to tell my children this. So if you could just go ahead and tell them, that would be great, because I don't want to. You will be very much missed, John. Thank you for your
As a
service.
former colleague, the years working with John pretty much right next door, he was a joy. Greatly missed.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to miss you.
Go ahead.
Then the next action item is to approve the contract of behavior intervention specialist. This is a new position for the district that the board approved. We had 15 applicants for the position. Lindsay Belts is who's being recommended for contract approval this evening. She was a first and second grade teacher and a PBIS district external coach for Bearable School District, 2013 to the present. She's a kindergarten teacher in the Toma School District, 2009 to 2013. She has a master's degree in educational leadership from Viterbo University and licensure in elementary education as a principal and director of instruction. The recommendation would be to consider contract for Lindsay Belts as a behavior intervention specialist at not less than $58,500 annual salary for the 2021 school year as presented.
This is exciting.
Steve Brown, I recommend contract for Lindsay Belts as behavior intervention specialist and not less than $58,500 annual salary for the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
So moved.
Nick Ploney, second.
Steve,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
and Dana. Aye. Motion carries. This is exciting. Thank you.
Then we have a contract for an elementary teacher. The actual placement will be in fourth grade, but the contract reads as an elementary teacher. There were 35 applicants for this position. Alyssa Glasson is up for contract approval this evening. She did her special education student teaching at Sand Lake Elementary in Holman, Wisconsin, and regular education student teaching at Prairie View Elementary in Holman, Wisconsin. She has a BS in education from UW La Crosse and licensure in elementary education and cross-categorical special education. The recommendation would be to consider a contract for Alyssa Glasson as an elementary teacher at not less than $43,000 annual salary for the 2020-21 school year as presented.
Jack Nicolai, I move that we consider contract for Alyssa Glasson as an elementary teacher at not less than $43,000 annual salary for the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
Jack,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Dana. Aye. Motion carries. This is really quite strange to see you guys in person and here, and it's very, very strange.
It's great to see you all.
Right? Like actual people.
So what I'm recommending this evening is a change to our salaried contract calendar. The Salem teacher or contracted employee ends on June 5th, leaving 5 days next week due to the calendar change where we ended our student days earlier. 3 days of that are needed for wrap up and assessment and finalizing the year. We know, based on the way things have gone this year and a lot of things being unsettled for next year, that there will be a need for additional staff time for the start of the next school year with many unknowns and nearly impossible to begin planning now because we really don't know for sure what we're planning for. Initially kind of had the idea of requesting to move 2 days from this year's calendar to next fall. So in other words, salaried staff would be paid in advance for those days with this year's balance of contract. So they would be basically 2 days owed. I did check in with our union leadership just to make sure. I mean, obviously it's not something that's negotiated, but I just wanted their perspective on doing that and make sure I understood that they were going to be supportive of that. They were very supportive and felt that that was a good thing for staff and that staff would be supportive of that as well. So my recommendation would be that the board approve ending the 2019-2020 contracted days on Wednesday, June 3rd, and then bank 2 days for the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year for planning and training purposes as presented.
I motion to end the 2019-2020 contracted days on Wednesday, June 3rd, and bank 2 days for the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year for planning and training purposes as presented.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
Nick,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Jack.
Aye.
And Dana, aye. Motion carries.
So I'm going to kind of go over an update on this year's budget and then also kind of a preview of next year's budget because it's important information for you to have as we move into the next board action item. Just a few kind of things we talked about earlier this evening. We're doing about 518 meals per day. And the USDA has actually extended our free meal program for children through August 31st of this year. Mm-hmm. The online learning has resulted in a need for additional Chromebooks and software updated to approve online learning. We're looking to kind of forward purchase a set of Chromebooks for the replacement cycle. Each year we bring in a new grade level. That'll be about $88,000. Our sub usage was down with savings of approximately $80,000. Obviously, the last 3 months of the year, we didn't have a lot of need for subs. Our utility costs are down with a savings of approximately $19,000. Training is down due to canceled conferences and savings, about $22,000. There's a loss of rental income that we used to receive from Kids Club during those months we were closed down, which would be a negative of $13,000. We're anticipating, if all goes well, that we'll get about an additional $100,000 from the Federal CARES Act. We have some alternative tuition savings based on student needs that we were tuitioning out of about $8,000. Transportation savings with Dousman, both for special ed and district transportation costs. We haven't determined exactly what that is yet. Supplies that were not needed, saving about $42,000, but then some increases for personal protective equipment and cleaning supplies. Looking ahead, things that we're going to have to look at is student enrollment. What is that going to look like in the fall? Are families going to opt for some different options that would be more conducive based on the current pandemic? Is there going to be a staffing impact from COVID-19? In other words, will we need to increase custodial staff next fall? Will we need to look at some of our class sizes? Are we going to need to increase our busing transportation costs, for example, as we look at potentially staggered starts? We presently have in there an increase of about 4% for staff compensation. We know about what CPI is, but because we don't know what we're getting from the state, we won't be able to address that at this point. CPI, I want to say it's like 2.8. But I will check on that to make sure I've got that right. Susan?
Isn't it 2.1?
Susan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
What is the CPI?
I want to say it's even lower than that, but it's probably 2.18.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Utilities, transportation, and food service, we're budgeting for about a 3.5% increase. We don't know where that will be. Certainly transportation, it may be a % increase per route, but we don't know how many routes we'll be running and what that will look like. Maintenance and long-term capital improvements, we're still waiting for the results of our facility study. So it's supposed to be due sometime, hopefully we are hoping to be done somewhere around June. One of the difficulties is one of the major aspects of the facility study is that they like to talk with our staff and look through each of the rooms and get staff feedback on how well educational spaces are working for them, because that does play a lot into what some of their recommendations are. So that piece will have some ability to do that virtually, but that will be kind of complicated. So that's a little bit of a delay on that right now. Technology infrastructure, software and hardware rotation. One of the things we've been talking a lot about is should we increase the number of grades that we have one-to-one Chromebooks for if we're going to be doing more of the online learning in the future. So that might be one of the aspects. And then legislative changes. We were originally budgeted for a $179 increase per pupil. I think conventional wisdom out there is that's probably a goner. But we could be facing as much as a $100 per pupil decrease, which would be a significant cut for us as a district. We believe that sometime this summer, you'll see a budget repair bill come through the legislature. There's no question that the state legislature is facing a huge revenue shortfall from sales tax and employment taxes, and they will have to adjust the state budget because they're required to have a balanced budget. So a lot of discussion around what that will mean for the schools next year. End of year, kind of where we're at. We had initially planned to put a pretty close to 400,000, so 387,000 addition to the fund balance, which would bring it up to that 12%. Remember, we were trying to bring it up to get closer to that 15%. The dilemma with that is it would not be aided as an expenditure. The legislature also will be scrutinizing fund balances as a talking point for pullback of funding. So I think that's something that merits some conversation before we make that decision. We'll have about $200,000 in unspent maintenance projects that could go into Fund 46 if we're not able to fund out that expense this year. Fund 46 is a building maintenance fund that is aidable. It goes in as an expenditure this year. And we have a remaining amount of about $358,000. So some of the options with that money would be to move some of the remaining unspent budgeted amounts to line items and spend some of those additional amounts this year. For example, Chromebooks, buying additional Chromebooks going into next year, some of that forward spending. We could add to the fund balance. So if you took that whole amount and put it into the fund balance, it would actually put our fund balance at 15% in 1 year. I would discourage that because that would be money that is unaided, especially right now. Or we could deposit some of it into Fund 46, which is approximately that 200,000 I talked about, available. And the good thing on this one is that it is aidable if we put it into Fund 46. We could, which is kind of a recent recommendation from Ms. Jarvis, our business manager, to potentially pay off our Wisconsin retirement unfunded liability, which is about $338,000. This would save us interest charges. The Wisconsin retirement yearly cost would decrease, leaving more room for expenditures under the revenue cap next year, where we potentially could have a shortfall. Or we could do a combination of the above.
Connie, I have a question. Where's the new reading program?
So we have some money set aside to do that. Much of that we're going to try and pull out of some of our title and federal funding. We believe that we can phase it in over 2 years. We think the overall cost is going to come out somewhere in that $300,000 range in doing that, but we budgeted for that between our federal grants and in our overall budget.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So it brings me to the next item on the agenda, which is the Wisconsin Retirement Unfunded Actuarial Accrued Liability. I want to spend a little more time explaining this because I do think it would be a good move for the board as we look at ending up our budget year. What is an unfunded actuarial accrued liability, known as a prior service liability? So this would be if prior to an employee joining the WRS, there were years of service that were not credited to Wisconsin Retirement. So our teachers have always been a part of Wisconsin Retirement, but our support staff was not always a part of Wisconsin Retirement, our hourly employees. At some point, the district made a decision to bring them into Wisconsin Retirement. But what that created were, for those employees who had been here for many years, their years of services had not been credited under Wisconsin Retirement. So the district, like many districts, took out a loan from Wisconsin, from the state of Wisconsin, to cover that unfunded liability, so that going forward, as our hourly employees retired, they would have access to that Wisconsin Retirement. The district has been paying that off over the years. But remember, I talked about we have about that $358,000. So our current liability is calculated by taking the initial amount determined to fund your employee's service prior to the time of the change. So going back and looking at the employees that we had and what they would have been credited had they been involved in Wisconsin Retirement from the beginning of their careers. Then interest was assessed over the years on that liability balance from the point where we borrowed it and started offering that as a benefit. The problem is that interest is assessed annually on the outstanding balance of the liability. The interest is currently at 7%. And I think that we can agree that that is an extremely high amount for interest. Many districts in the state of Wisconsin opted to refinance that over the years. For some reason, the Salem School District did not refinance that. And I would recommend, even if we don't make a decision to pay off the unfunded liability, we certainly look to refinance it. So right now we have a total amount currently outstanding of $338,000. We have paid $153,000 in interest since 2015. The annual interest for this year is projected at about $20,000 plus. A $110,000 combined interest principal payment was made last year. Paying it off would prevent further interest charges. It could be state aided as an expenditure. So right now as a district, we are funded at about 46%, somewhere in there at the state level. So if you think about paying that $338,000 on one end, you could put it in your fund balance and do nothing from a state aid perspective. On the other end, we could pay it off as an expenditure and gain pretty close to half of that as state aid. Not only that, it would remove close to $100,000 from under our revenue cap for expenses next year when we know there will be a shortfall, as well as smaller amounts in the next probably 7 years where we were slated to pay that off. So my recommendation, in normally I wouldn't recommend this large of an expenditure in a year if there are other things that we could put it for that would result in flexibility under the cap as well. For example, putting it into our Fund 46 for maintenance. This is one of those unique times where I would say either A, for sure we need to refinance that, but because of some of the additional funding we have due to some of the lesser expenses under COVID-19, it's kind of a unique opportunity to take care of that and also give us some room in next year's budget. So my recommendation would be to consider approval to pay the Wisconsin Retirement unfunded actuarial accrued liability out of our 2019-2020 expenditures as presented.
Do you have any idea what type of interest rate we would get if we refinanced?
Susan, I'm going to ask you on this one, but I'm guessing we could probably get somewhere in the range of 2 or 3, maybe even.
I would say closer to 3% on refinancing this. And what happens now is we pay this every time we make a payroll. The employer portion, even though the employee portion is at 6.75, we pay 8.05% on the WRS to pay it little by little by little. So that's why it's very difficult to get this balance down, because you're paying in smaller amounts. And that's why the interest is so high, because it gets extended beyond just 12 months. It ends up being 10 years, 15 years. A lot of districts have this unfunded liability due to the fact that they didn't have support staff on WRS at the same time that they had teachers. So I don't know, we could probably cut the interest in half at least that we're paying, but considering we're in a unique position, considering it is something that is aidable, I think it's a really good idea to remove that liability and save $100,000 in next year's budget.
So even though paying it off would be $338,000, in reality, it'd be an additional about $230,000 because we'd have to pay the $100,000 payment anyway.
So one question I have about all this, I think it's a great idea to get this done. Personally, I just think the amount of interest in 2015, that's quite a bit. A part of me is wondering why we didn't refinance earlier, because I believe us as a school district have a A+ credit rating, if I remember correctly. And with that being said, it actually makes me wonder what other accounts or other loans that we have out there that are on a higher interest that we can take advantage of right now. And furthermore, I'm curious to see if we can get a list of all the loans that we are have taken out right now with their interest on there, so we can all as a board review this. Because right now we all know interest rates are totally down right now. The Fed's at a 0, I believe. So if we're going to restructure all of our loans right now, possibly this might be the time to do it. I understand this one is just unique because it's aidable. We're talking about this right now, but I'd be very curious to see what all of our loans are and the interest rates and what we've been paying in interest on those particular loans that are going on right now.
So Susan, my knowledge of where we're at with that is the board approves any short-term borrowing, and so that has been done fairly recently, and that's through a local bank. And what was that interest rate?
It's very small. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it is smaller than if we had gone with Associated Bank, right. With all of the fees that are associated with that. And as far as loans that we have out there right now, I did speak with Baird, who is our financial consultant, and they said with our Fund 38 energy exemption loans, it would not pay to refinance at this time, and they were going to keep an eye on it. So I've got Lisa Voisin keeping an eye on those amounts that we have remaining, which I think there's 2 more years that it's large amounts, about $450,000. And then from there, it drops off to $80,000 a year for a lot of years. So,
Susan,
but it goes to a smaller amount.
Susan, this is Steve. Why did she say, or why do you think she said they should not we should not look at the possibility of renegotiating on those other loans that are out there?
The Baird said that we would not get a lower price on the loans that we have for the energy exemption bonds.
Is that what we did with Nexus? However many years ago?
Yes.
Well, I still think as a board, I'm going to make a motion right here in a second, but I think as a board, I think especially being on the finance committee too, to not have all the interest paid and all the loans out there. This has just brought something to attention. I just think it's a good idea for us to have an understanding of that, especially in the next couple of years, what we're going to be facing possibly to understand what we can do to make ourselves better financially in the district. But I'm going to make a motion here that I motion to consider approval to pay WRS unfunded extra accrued liability out of 2019-2020 expenditures as presented.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
Jack?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Nick
Aye.
and Dana, aye. Motion carries.
And
Thanks,
you know,
guys.
I also agree with Nick in terms of if we could get as a board just a listing of all the loans that are out there, just so we can take a look at it, just be aware of it. I think, I mean, certainly the finance committee, but all of us as a board, I think that's a very good idea.
Agreed.
So I will get that set up. We'll do for an information item for the next one. Like I said, it was something that when I looked at it, I can't, having not been here at the time, I can't answer why a decision was made not to refinance that particular loan, because I know that many districts at the time did, but there may well have been some reasons why that wasn't done at that point. So we'll check out all of them.
You know, and I think also that's helpful in terms of when the time comes that we decide that it's time for a referendum, that we have all that information. I think all that's very valuable.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go through a series of recommended employee handbook changes so that you're aware after Act 10, rather than collective bargaining agreements, districts then were obligated to set up employee handbooks as it related to kind of that employee-employer relationship. And that gave the board pretty wide autonomy to make changes on an annual basis within a period of time. But typically what districts would do would be to get input from staff on kind of an annual basis as to whether there were things within the employee handbook that were particular areas of contention. It doesn't mean that you would change all of those things, but it gives you a chance on an annual basis to kind of hear from the employees in terms of what they're thinking. Things that might make things more attractive to them from an employee perspective, or things that are making life difficult for them based on policies. And again, there is no obligation for the board to change any of these things, but there are some things that I would like to present to the board at least to consider. All staff were surveyed and asked for feedback on various aspects of the present handbook. I would bring up things like the section on leave related to employee sick days, and then giving feedback in terms of if a change was needed or a change was desired. The Personnel Committee and Finance Committee met as a joint committee last week to kind of preview some of the recommendations. I won't say that I believe this will be the end to the handbook changes, because there are some statutory changes that need to be made. There are changes that could take place later, but the changes that I'm recommending to you this evening would be changes that need to be taken prior to July 1, because the employee aspect of that changes over that following year. All recommendations did receive support from the committees as we go forward. Oh, I guess I'm not, my mic. Is it on now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So all staff were surveyed asking for feedback on various aspects of the present handbook. Other changes will be submitted for approval throughout the summer that are more statutory in nature or can be implemented at a later date. The Personnel Committee and Finance Committee met to preview recommendations on Wednesday, May 20th, on things that will need to be in place prior to July 1, 2020. All recommendations received support from the committees. So the first change is as it relates to funeral and bereavement leave. One of the aspects that came up from our employees is the feeling that 3 days may work for an aunt or an uncle. But if, for example, the death in your family is a spouse or a child, 3 days just would not be enough or is not realistic under those circumstances. So what I'm recommending is that we increase the number of days for bereavement leave to 10 days for a spouse or a child. Could be a foster child, could be a stepchild, but a child or a spouse. And then increase the window to use that leave up to 1 month with exceptions granted by the district administrator. The reason for the change, obviously 10 days goes beyond the 7 days, which our handbook is. But I would also remind people that as it relates to coronavirus, for example, many services and that type of thing were held off or not able to be held within that 7-day period. So my recommendation would be to allow district administrator exceptions, but then to increase for a spouse or a child and the window to 1 month.
I motion to increase to 10 days for spouse or child and increase the window to use leave to 1 month with exceptions granted by the district administrator as presented.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
Jack?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
And then Dana, aye. Motion carries.
So then presently we have a situation where our staff are entitled to 2 different types of leave. Emergency leave, which is for those things that are kind of unexpected in nature, and sick leave, which is for actual sick leave or taking care of a family member, for example, for personal illness. One of the things that we had a lot of feedback from staff was some more flexibility in how those days were used. And the range of recommendations would go all the way from just paid time off, you call in, you don't give a reason, all the way to, like we have it now, pretty restrictive with number of days tied to each. My recommendation, just because staffing of substitutes is difficult, a little bit of an in-between. So not a total with paid time off, but taking the emergency days and the sick leave days and putting them together as one. So what would be an emergency day? For example, your child care provider is ill and you don't have child care on a given day. Another reason could be you have the pipes broken, flooded your basement, and you have to have a plumber come in. So again, unexpected. Obviously, sick leave is sick leave. But combining those to say you have X many sick/emergency days, and as the district office doesn't have to get in counting how many emergency days did you use, how many sick days have you used, because they come from the same pot regardless. The other recommendation that I have related to that is, for some reason, our hourly school year staff were only given 5 sick days. And that is not a lot of sick days for people who may, for example, have children, families. Our teachers have the 10 days for the school year. But I would argue that oftentimes our teacher assistants, for example, spend a lot of time one-on-one with kids, pick up a lot of those kid illnesses from the students, and that the 5 days is just not adequate for what their needs are. And it has created hardship with our hourly employees. My recommendation is to actually move to a 1 day per month. So if we have school year employees, for example, our teachers, they would have 10 sick days, 6/emergency days, as they have now. But our hourly staff that's on year round would move to 12, because they would be working 12 months. Our school year teacher assistants, hourly employees would go to 10 days because they work basically the 10 months out of the year. So it would be an increase kind of across the board, or some added flexibility for all of our employees. So the recommendation would be to combine with sick emergency day to create 6 sick sick/emergency days to provide more flexibility, yet still some accountability. The total amount of paid leave, sick/emergency days, to 1 per month. School year employees would get 10 and year round would get 12 as presented.
Steve Brown, I move to combine with sick to create sick emergency days to provide more flexibility, yet still have accountability. Total amount of paid sick emergency days to be 1 per month. School year employees would get 10 and year round would get 12 as presented.
So moved.
Jack Nicolai, second.
Nick?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Motion carries.
So then the other thing I would like to bring today would be vacation for support staff. So this only applies to our full year, so year-round employees that are hourly. So right now, the present language only allows for 5 days of vacation after a full year of service to the district. Then 10 days after 2 years of service, and then 15 after 5, 20 after 15. In most places of employment, 2 weeks of vacation annually is kind of the industry standard. This has been a hardship for our new employees. If you can imagine coming into a district and not having a vacation day for a full year. And the reason why some people mid-career choose not to accept employment with us because of the loss of vacation days. We recently had a couple situations where the offer fell through because of lack of vacation. My recommendation is we increase our hourly year-round employees to 2 weeks vacation annually, starting with that first year, but prorated in that first year so that it's not all at once. It comes the 1 per month up until they reach that anniversary date. From that first year all the way through the 5th year as presented. So there would be no change for anything over that 2 years. It would just be for those first 2 years, the change I'm recommending.
I move we increase to 2 weeks vacation annually from first year through 5th year as presented.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
Nick?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And aye. Motion carries.
So then the next couple changes are a little more minor. First of all, our employee handbook does have the normal teacher day shall be from 7:50 to 3:50 p.m., during which time, et cetera, teachers will be expected to maintain a teaching posture and maintain discipline both in and out of the classroom. Because of the change with our early start, that would change the teacher day. So the recommendation, I'm actually going to give you 2 options, but the important recommendation that we need to do is to adjust the new approved 2020-2021 calendar with early start on Tuesday and Wednesday, which would be the 7:30 a.m. to 3:50 p.m. for common planning time, and a normal day schedule of 8 a.m. to 3:50 p.m. as presented. Another alternative, because there are situations that require some flexibility, would be to have the teacher day schedule set by their supervisor. So you may have a reason as a direct supervisor to adjust that or flex that day for some reason. So depending upon where the board wants to go on that, you could give wide leeway for the administrative team to determine what the teacher day looks like. Or you could, at a minimum, we'd have to change this aspect of the handbook to accommodate the common planning time.
Would the flexibility given to the administrator change the actual working hours of a teacher during the school day?
No, the FTE is still based on that typical 7.5-hour day with the duty-free lunch or the 8-hour day. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
That would be for a full-time teacher, though, of course, if you had a teacher who was part-time, it would be based on FTE.
Connie, is that a recommendation on here for the flexible option?
No.
So we can make a motion to approve flexible scheduling based on administrative team, or?
Correct. So it would be based on the direct supervisor's recommendation.
Do you think that's more advantageous?
I think it gives some flexibility to the administrator, and it also creates a situation where if we tweak the calendar in some way, you don't have to bring it back for board action. So like, let's say next year, we tweak the calendar somewhat, and we move to Tuesday and Friday. I'm not saying that we would, but let's say that a change is made. It wouldn't have to come back to the board for approval on that. You may also have a situation where you have somebody who's engaged in some family outreach activities, so it's advantageous for them to be available a little later in the evening, and you may do some flex scheduling with an employee that doesn't have classes to teach based on that kind of a need.
Okay.
Don't we do that already to some extent? We've got staff meetings and we've got other staffing requirements that are not on the calendar.
Correct.
Yeah. So, you know, when you were talking about going back and changing the calendar, we haven't really done that. It has always been handled by, you know, post Act 10 has always been handled administratively, right?
Except for the handbook does have that the normal teacher day is 7:50 to 3:50. Presently in the handbook.
Yeah, yeah.
So
that flexibility may have been occurring outside of what the handbook language says.
Right.
So I motion for the administrative team to have the flexibility to schedule each employee as needed throughout the school year based on the 8-hour FTE duty-free lunch.
So moved. It's the best motion ever.
Lisa Hines, second.
Jack.
Fabulous.
Aye, nice job, Nick.
Nick.
Threw that one together and stuck.
Steve.
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
And myself, aye. And motion carries.
Oh,
And Nick, you were laughing through it, so I just assumed you were good with
it was
it.
an aye anyway.
Yeah, it's total aye. Yeah.
I made the motion.
Anyway.
So the next change actually gives some flexibility to the administrative team also. Presently, our handbook language talks about every employee, hourly employees, that's 4 to 6 hours. They're given one 15-minute break and 30 minutes of unpaid meal break. Our 6 to 8 hour employees are given 2 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute working lunch. This has created some disparities from the perspective of our staff, because some of our staff on working lunch can barely eat. They may be supervising a cafeteria full of kids. Other staff have a lot more kind of flexibility and leeway and less duty during that time. Sometimes we have a need for employees after school or employees before school. And so by saying that the 6 to 8 hour schedule could include a 30-minute paid working lunch or a 30-minute unpaid duty-free lunch to better accommodate student supervision needs during lunch or before and after school, depending on supervisor recommendation as presented. So this does give the supervisor some flexibility in determining what that paid lunch or unpaid lunch, whichever is more advantageous to student supervision.
I motion to allow 6 to 8 hour schedules to include a 30-minute paid working lunch or a 30-minute unpaid duty-free lunch to better accommodate student supervision needs during lunch or before and after school, depending on supervisor recommendation as presented.
So moved.
Lisa Hines, second.
Jack.
Aye.
Lisa. Steve.
Aye.
Nick.
Aye.
And Dana, myself, motion carries.
So done with the action items. Just some updates on planning for the 2020-21 school year. Just wanted to let you know that throughout this period of time, I've been meeting with and working with local district administrators, talking about the what if, what it might look like next year. What my plan or what I've communicated with staff would be that we at least think about and plan an ability to move through various phases next year that could include staggered starts, for example, on alternative days as we look to potentially cut down class sizes. So you could have online on a couple days a week, could have in class a couple days a week. My assumption is there could be a time next fall where we end up back in full online, depending upon the pandemic spread. It's very likely if we do end up with all kids back that we'll have to schedule somewhat differently so students are not intermingling a lot with each other. We can kind of keep track of homerooms. Part of the reason for that is that contact tracing gets very difficult if students are circulating throughout the building kind of as they would be under a traditional schedule. So looking at potentially keeping homerooms together, having teachers move to rooms instead of students move about and switch classes. We could look at kind of a hybrid where, for example, some of the classes are taught online. And for example, the upper grades, some of the lower grades are in the building where they can be spread out more. So a lot of different options looking at, but I just wanted you to know that we are kind of starting that planning phase. And my goal would be to have a schedule and class lists that would allow us to kind of seamlessly move. It's never going to be seamless, but where we plan ahead if we have to move into either of those options, unlike things were this year where all of a sudden we were told this is the way it is. Obviously, one of the major things that we're going to have to try and figure out is transportation under that scenario. Some districts that have buses dedicated to their district have a little more autonomy to run a route, say, for example, at 7 o'clock in the morning and then run another route at 8 o'clock in the morning. Because we share buses with other districts, that's going to be more complicated. But it might be that kind of a scenario where we do, 2/3 of days and kind of shift kids around a little bit.
Connie, excuse me. In your discussions with other school district administrators, with regards to transportation, I'm speaking in general terms now, nothing specific about any transportation companies or any contractual issues with any companies. But is this something that other administrators are also talking about in the event of schools going to a varied schedule? Some students going 3 days a week, 4 days a week, starting later, starting earlier, and how that would impact transportation, especially if school districts are sharing transportation companies' buses.
So we had a pretty lengthy conversation with our bus contractor that we use in several districts about what they're potentially looking at and what that would look like for those of our districts that share. I pretty much told Bristol that they had to accommodate us at the last meeting, and he wasn't so sure that he was willing to do that. But definitely we've been having conversations around the best way to do that. And the bus company has definitely been a part of those conversations, asking for what is your capacity to do this. One of the realities of bus drivers is that many of them are in that protected age category. So one of the things that the bus company told us was they're very concerned about the actual number of drivers that they will have return, and what the flexibility is going to be related to that. So, one of those, real significant factors that I think every district is really going to have to look closely and creatively at is, unless we're full in, which is very unlikely in the fall, trying to accommodate smaller numbers of kids on buses is going to be complicated and is going to require a lot of flexibility as we do that. There are CDC guidelines right now that suggest 2 students in a row on far sides, skipping a row, 2 students, which would mean that a school bus would accommodate about 12 to 14 students.
Sure.
And so you can imagine what that would look like. And again, that's CDC guidelines. I don't know if that will change, but definitely thinking about and trying to come up with plans to address that.
Is DPI offering any support? Are they getting involved? Is there any?
So what we're hearing from DPI, and that's that last bullet point that I have up here
Sorry.
right now. Am I off?
Yes.
I'm just thinking, like, how do you even execute?
So DPI
You're
and
You're muted.
what happened to that one click mute button? It's supposed to work so well. So DPI and the CDC are offering guidelines. And that's one of the comments I made that I'm assuming that you will read into, is that the decision lies with the board,
Gotcha.
which also means that the accountability lies with the board. And so DPI will be issuing guidelines, issuing some language related to ways that the district could look at it and suggestions. But in our conversations, we are really feeling as if you're not going to get hard and fast guidelines from DPI.
That's okay. I mean, it's a starting point, and I think the control should be by district because every district is unique, and I'm okay with that. But it's overwhelming, and not to have some communication from DPI or offer some type of
and they've definitely been
or is a concern.
They've definitely been involved in making recommendations and sharing what they believe things could look like, things that districts should consider, but that the actual decision lies with the district. Very similar to, if you remember, when we were talking about ending the school year early. Mm-hmm. There were the recommendations, but clear guidance saying that that's a board decision. That's a decision that the board will make. So much of this depends on access to a vaccine. It depends on whether you see those surges again. I mean, I think we can anticipate that next fall you could have a surge again. So would you start up the school year where you're looking at an altered schedule, then move into, for example, back to full online again? I think there's definitely a recognition by DPI, and I think it's become much more kind of a one voice out there, that the present online system is failing many of the students that were a part of that academic achievement gap to begin with, and looking for options to better meet the needs of those particular students, and also a real struggle for our families, especially noting that, as for example in Wisconsin, we open up, what that means for many families is they're expected to go back to work. But if school's not open, then that creates some real hardship for families around childcare. So there are many, many questions that just are ponderings right now. Hopefully we'll have a little more information as the summer progresses. But there's no question in my mind we're going to have to be flexible next year and probably walk into the year with multiple scenarios as they play out. And that was one of the reasons why I felt that at least a couple of those days from this year would be better spent as we move into next fall.
If it does come down to this too, we could offer it to the families of even if you get your registration fee covered, if they promise to drive in their kid, because I'm sure there's plenty of, like, I would be happy to if it comes down to it.
Right.
So that's,
So
I mean, always
that would
not
be all those things that we'd have to try and figure out when the time comes, once we have the kind of current reality at the time.
Wow.
Okay. So then just an update on the PK5 principal search process, because this is a really important position for our district going forward. I just wanted to let you know that we had 38 applicants for that position. With the help of multiple kind of staff members taking a look at the first of applicants, we were able to narrow it down to 7 applicants. I had about 8 different people give me their top 6, and then I kind of whittled down from the number of kind of votes they had from there. We have virtual interviews scheduled for Thursday this week, May 28th, with grade level, support staff, administrative team members, and board parents on the interview committee through the 1st. Then we'll be narrowing down to 2 or 3 finalists, and in this one we'll have broad virtual access for all of our staff that are in that PK4, a larger number of parents, and kind of a greater circle to give feedback on that, with the hope of trying to accommodate those interviews that following week, so next week, and then having somebody to offer very shortly after that. So, any questions?
So I'm reading that last bullet point, finalist interviews, that'll include all board members?
Yes.
Okay.
We might actually set up kind of a setting where you have them move between groups. So they might have interviews with different groups and then collecting feedback from that.
Would there be any way for us to get a list of the 7 candidates?
Yes, I can get that for you. What I will be doing, I want to be, certainly with board members, I'll get that information to you. I want to be a little careful about putting those names out at this point, because many of the people in that first round of interviews have not shared that information with their current employer. When it goes down to the actual finalists for that position, we'll release that broadly. Once you become a finalist, then that information is much more open. Right.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, administrator reports. Dr. Hampson.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that we had our belongings pickup that took place last Wednesday. So we had a lot of teachers and support staff that volunteered to assist with that. So we had a lot of families that came to pick up those belongings that we still had. Our teachers now are continuing to do their online, and of course this is our last week of that. But all in all, I think things went really well. Parents pitched in a great deal, and the teachers worked at meeting with their students. So this will be the very last week of that. Graduation, we're putting that together. I know some of you will be involved in that as well. So we asked our 8th graders to get their tile ready. So that's been a tradition that we've had since 2007, that the students put a memory tile together, something that they recall from their year or years at Salem. And then this year, through a suggestion by Dr. Valenza, we are having a company that's going to be assisting us with that. Usually we have the students paint their tile, and it did take some time for them to do that, which we don't really have the ability for them to come in and do that. But Dr. Valenza had suggested a company that they had used at one time. So the students drew out their memory, then they used markers or colored pencils for that, and they turned that in last Wednesday to their teacher. And then we will send that in, and they will make copies of that on the tile itself. And then parents will also have the opportunity to purchase one if they choose. So we're looking forward to seeing those come out. We also asked 8th graders to send their baby picture and their 8th grade picture in. Of course, this is another tradition from Salem. So then we right now have 8th grade putting together the virtual graduation, and that will be part of the virtual graduation as well. They also picked up their gown on Wednesday, and so they're asked to take a picture of themselves in their gown so that we can use that as well when we're announcing the names of the graduates. Each student is going to be receiving a t-shirt that the 8th grade staff had put together. So that's kind of exciting, a nice little gift for them to have to commemorate the memory of the graduation.
What does the t-shirt say?
I'm sorry?
What does the t-shirt say? Is it something funny like I graduated in the worst year ever?
No. So we have, 2020 graduate. And they're also, they have the graduate that's on the t-shirt doing the dab, which is something that kind of circulated around 8th grade with the 8th grade teachers. So it's kind of a nice memory for the students to have as well. So we'll have to get a picture of that for you so you can see it. So then we have the graduation that will occur at 7 o'clock on the original date, which was June 3rd. And then on June 4th, we're going to have our 8th graders or graduates at that point bring their Chromebooks back to school to turn those in. At that time, then they're going to receive their diploma and then also have the ability to, on the other side of the school, to have a picture taken with their family. We're going to use our school photographer that will come in and take that picture then of the graduate and the family. So, and then we'll move them out and move in another family then at that point. So they'll get to do that, in front of the building. So our stage is currently decorated. So we're all set then for our speakers to begin our virtual graduation. We have chairs that have our students' names on them. This is, a lot of work that's being done. I'm having a lot of help from the aides at Salem, our paraprofessionals, Dawn and Gail in the office, all putting a lot of work into assisting with putting this special graduation together for our students who deserve that. So, and that's about all I had.
Thank you, Eileen. That was great.
So I have Judith Brochkowski, Director of Student Services and Special Education. Are you there?
I am here. I want to take a few more minutes than I typically do. I know I typically give you some brief snippets as far as what's going on, but I knew this agenda was a little bit lighter, and just to let you know a lot of the work that we've been doing the last couple of months and how that's going to play out into next year as well. The last 2.5 months have just been busier than ever, and it's also brought us really new opportunities and a chance to work with staff in a new way, ways I've never been able to do in a traditional setting. More than ever, teams have been collaborating on curriculum, teaching, and the needs of our students. As it's hard to come through any storm unchanged, we are emerging with new perspective and a set of skills that are really going to help our school transform. So I cannot be more thankful to the teams that I've been working with and the time that I've had to spend with the teachers and the administrators and growing together. So I just want to highlight a few things that we've been focusing on. We've really been taking a look at social emotional learning. I've been working with the student service team, our school counselors, social worker, and school psychologists, and we've created a partnership with Panorama to create and distribute a research-based survey of the social emotional needs of our students. It was distributed online to grades 3 through 8, grades K through 2. The teachers complete those surveys based on the different habits and skills that they've seen in the classroom. And this will help us understand the strengths and the opportunities based on concrete data in order to help create a strong SEL program. This is not only focused on our students, we're also doing a very similar survey to our teachers, as they are equally important. You cannot take care of others if you're not first taking care of yourself. So our teachers are our most valuable asset, and we must be very mindful that they too have needs that need to be met in order to meet the needs of others. They're going through a difficult time too. As we believe all children will do well when they have the right skills, we also believe the same is true for our educators. Our goal is to build a strong school culture based on data, and this data will come from sources such as our teachers and student surveys, our discipline data, data from our academic testing, and also parent feedback. We're also putting together right now an SEL parent survey as well, because it's important to understand what's happening in our families and their perception of what's happening in school. Other things we're focusing on creating a welcoming school culture. It's going to be difficult to reintegrate students back into the school culture that they've been gone for so long. We're looking for ways to help them and families connect and re-engage. We're focusing on belonging, which is a major skill of SEL, and making strong connections to the school community, to all staff, and to their classmates. And this is really important to us because we may have some students who cannot participate in person. They're going to have to participate online, possibly due to health needs. And so how do we create that sense of belonging when all your friends and classmates are in the classroom and you're sitting at home watching the class virtually? We want to focus on positive solutions to discipline. As we know, many of our students, or some of our students and staff, will be returning to school with new needs, and we must turn to a culture of restorative practices and teaching skill deficits. Some of our students may have been exposed to hardships and stress of families trying to balance all the school, home, and work obligations that they have. Our student service team has been focused on the work of Ross Green. We hope to bring his work to the teachers sometime next year. And his work is all about having a mindset that behaviors are simply missing skills. We're going to be focusing on kindness. Our school counselors have always focused on the topic each month, but we're going to keep kindness going all year long as we really want to continue working on our anti-bullying. We're going to be focusing on growth mindset, especially in times like these. We need to be more mindful than ever. We need to understand our own feelings and emotions and how to manage our feelings, and yet keep that mindset of hope and growth. Focusing on all of this, of course, the teachers need the tools. They need the tools to be embed this into their daily lessons. So we're looking at a couple different curriculum. Mind Up and Character Strong are two that we are seeking out right now. Part of the research may include a pilot program or one of both of these programs. In order to help start the work of SEL, we do have an SEL team writing a grant to help with the purchase of the SEL curriculum and programming. As we continue to build a cultural professional learning communities, we not only want to look at what's being taught, but we want to use that grant to be able to help the teachers have the skill to really dive deep into the what. We're not only focused on our students, but like I said, we're focused on staff as well. With every new initiative or change, we've been stopping to consider how this is going to be perceived by our staff. We know that adding more is not the right thing to do. Instead, we're looking for ways to really change our current practices to fit the social emotional needs of our staff. This includes being very mindful that staff may be in a place where their own child's school is closed and yet they are in the classroom, as we were talking about before. So we need to do things even like looking at childcare options and helping them find a way to manage. And finally, but certainly I know this isn't a short list, we're focused on safety. We have some families who are going to be very cautious about sending their child to school when they've not been out in the public for a long time. So we need to create a peace of mind for all by focusing on the health safety of our school. So that's on the SEL side. We've also been continuing to focus on the research to inclusion practices. This is that 3-year grant that we received from DPI. If you recall, we received $10,000 in funding this year, and we'll be receiving $16,000 next year. The primary focus is familiarizing ourselves with best practices in the area of the professional learning communities and equity. So we formed a district leadership team, which consists of school staff, administration, and a parent. Together, we've engaged in a book study around the PLC process called Learning by Doing. The work will help build strong teams focused on essential academic standards, common formative assessments, interventions, and gifted and talented programs. Recently, we started looking at the mission, vision, and guiding beliefs for our district. In order to move together as one, we must all share the vision and mindset as one. So from what I've learned, this is the first time in a while that we're really breathing new life into our district's vision. And finally, we'll be focused on building equity for all students. When we say all, we truly mean all students will succeed. In our world today, this is so important because of those barriers and they have contributed to the achievement gap. And with distance learning, as we had just talked earlier too, that gap is only widening. And so we need to be looking at a platform that's going to be equitable for all students and their families too. So this is work that's going to be going on over the next 3 to 5 years. It's not a new initiative, but it's really an examination of our beliefs and vision in order to create a strong culture that's going to support that vision. The work will not stop if a teacher or administrator comes and goes, because we're truly focused on the culture. And finally, we've really been taking a hard look at the academics. Ryan's been doing a fantastic job leading the reading initiative and finding the new curriculum. But we need to be focusing on the learning this year and what the impact's going to be for next year. We can't get back the lost time for this year, but we can look forward to next year in order to really refine our learning objectives to be hyper-focused on what all students need to know before the end of next year. DPI is strongly suggesting that we don't look back, but instead we look ahead at what skills the student's going to need in order to be successful next year, and building that strong base of knowledge in order for all students to be successful and engaged. We need to know what those barriers are to learning and re-image the system so all can access the same high quality instruction. We can't just take that traditional classroom and simply move it online. We know that that's not going to be equitable. So we need to understand the needs of the learner at home and create a better system for programming. And we're looking for better ways to provide that universal screening to know what all students know, so we can be very targeted in our instruction. We may have less time in the classroom, so we're really going to have to be focused. And we need to provide intervention through a new lens too. We know that removing a student from high quality core instruction adds to that achievement gap. So we're looking, and again, on the online format, how are we going to give the students that intervention without just adding more to them? So we're focused on a lot: social emotional needs, equity, building a strong curriculum with good, solid, essential standards for each grade. It's been great to be working with several different teams on this. Our teachers really have rocked this transition. I'm so proud to be part of this family, and once again, thank you all for your leadership and dedication to our school community. I know this hasn't been easy for any of us, and I just really appreciate being on this team, so thank you.
Judy, a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
As you look at this past 3 months or so and into next year, and whether something could be worked into the grants that we've received, or the PLC, or anything else that we are working on in the district, how do you look at the whole issue, the whole area of special ed and least restrictive environment as we are now in this virtual educational setting, especially into next year?
Yeah. So least restrictive environment to me means being in the environment where the student learns best and achieving towards their goals. That's the most important thing, is we set those yearly goals out there and we need to be achieving them. And I do have to say that many of our students are responding extremely well to the online and that individualized teaching that our teachers are able to give right now. Their calendars are just as full as anybody's right now, as far as they've got very set schedules. They call certain families, I got you on Monday, Wednesday, I have you on Tuesday, Thursday, making sure that they accommodate the family's schedule. They're doing a combination of both online learning. They're delivering some learning packets directly to the home. They're having all of their paraprofessionals continue to support those students. And we've been adding more support to those students. So just because we may have had 30 minutes of something in school, we know that it might need 30 minutes over 3 days at home in order to truly support them. So we've been taking and going above and beyond in areas just to make sure that they're successful. But yet we still have those students who are not engaged.
Mm-hmm. And are you gathering data and information so perhaps as you look at the grants and future grants, that perhaps this could be a research design of some sort?
Yes. So all of our teachers have been recording exactly what they've been doing, the student they're working with, the amount of time, and then the progress towards that particular goal as well. And so then we know that if something's not working, then we need to be changing it up. But that's the biggest thing, is to be collecting data and really making informed decisions based on that data.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Judy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
And then we have Mr. Sandberg.
Good evening, everyone. So I'll just kind of give a quick report on virtual learning again, and then kind of talk a little bit of curriculum. One of the things, first of all, the teachers in 6-8, not just 6-8, but since I've kind of been working with them, I've done a fabulous job and continue to do a fabulous job with virtual learning and all they're doing, how they're reaching out to all those students. I mean, a lot of these teachers have obviously 100 students, and how they're trying to still get to meet all these students is a pretty unique thing, and how they're able to do that. So they're continuing to do a great job with that. And the great thing is the majority of students have continued to be engaged throughout virtual learning throughout this process. One of the things we've looked at is how grading would look for the fourth quarter, particularly not just in 6-8, but just as the whole grade. And so as administrator throughout the entire grade. So one of the things we're doing, we talked to the administrative team, we understand this is an unprecedented time for both families and teachers and things like that. Therefore, feedback for the fourth quarter is going to be in the form of a progress report, and we'll focus on student engagement and their progress during the fourth quarter. It's not going to be focused on grades. Learning is going to be the ultimate objective on this. And we received input from surrounding school districts and teachers, and we've also received guidance from the Wisconsin Department of Public Education. And so therefore, like I said, all of K-8, any work not completed during virtual learning will not have an adverse effect on the student's grades, and a student will not necessarily, quote unquote, fail a class during the fourth quarter. And so we've kind of changed the letter codes for each grade level to kind of reflect that a little bit. So instead of having a traditional like letter grade A through F system in 3-8 and satisfactory and things like that in K2, we've kind of defined them into 3 different letter codes. So we've got a making progress, which basically means students were engaged in making progress throughout the quarter. What that looks like for each teacher and things like that is going to be what that looks like for each grade level, and how each student does that for each teacher could be dependent on how many different assignments and things they actually do complete. But again, if they're making progress, that's the main goal. It's not we turned in so many assignments. It's just were teachers able to see growth throughout that during virtual learning. Needs improvement was the second letter grade we had, and basically it showed engagement was kind of inconsistent, and there was little evidence to show that progress was being made. And the final one was insufficient evidence. And this was really for those families where maybe they were just overwhelmed with virtual learning as a whole, or there was a barrier that kind of impacted their learning. So one of the things we wanted to do is do an insufficient grade or an insufficient evidence grade, which basically just showed that we just couldn't get a grade. And we understand this is a tough situation for a lot of families. And so that's kind of the route we did there. So again, there wouldn't be necessarily no grades as far as an A through F. And again, no student is going to fail a grade or anything like that throughout fourth quarter. And then to kind of move on towards the curriculum, the literacy team has been working extremely hard throughout this entire interesting time with kind of continuing to move forward with the reading curriculum. We've picked a reading curriculum. We're really excited about that. We're going to kind of present that in June at the next board meeting. And one of the things we've kind of looked at, the main things we focused on throughout that process were basically 3 things. We wanted to show you what did the research say about that curriculum? What did our staff, we asked for staff feedback throughout this entire process through a survey. What were the 4 main things that our staff wanted in a reading curriculum? We called it the Falcon 4. And finally, we got feedback through different, obviously, talkings with teachers, observations, and obviously just through the literacy team itself, too. So like I said, we'll have more details to go on that as we continue into June. So that's my report. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Finance and Personnel Committees on May 20th, 2020. You have a set of minutes. The main thing that we focused on in that meeting was to come up with the recommendations that you addressed earlier this evening related to the unfunded liability and related to the different employee handbook changes that we went over. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add from those of you that were at the committee meeting. Nope. Okay. So a couple of requests to schedule for committee meetings. One of the areas that I would like to request would be for the Education Review Committee. And that would be to take a look at the reading curriculum that we're proposing. I would recommend that be kind of mid-June, somewhere in that time window. And then I'd also like to request a Policy and Community Relations Committee. to address some of the student handbook issues going into next school year. Hopefully we'll have kids that are here to misbehave and we'll have to have a handbook. I hate to say that that's a positive thing, but today it's a positive thing. So again, somewhere in that mid-June to, the week before our board meeting, somewhere in there. I could just give you the notice and then kind of send you some emails to try and coordinate that when we have a little better knowledge around that time, if that works.
Sure.
That works.
When do you want to do our board planning session?
I'm thinking that we would look a little more at July on that.
Okay.
And then we have our regular school board meeting Tuesday, June 23rd at 7 p.m.
Great. Steve?
Yes. I move that we go into closed session under the following statute: 19.851E, deliberating or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session in regards to vendor, contractor proposal. The board will then reconvene an open session to take any action from the closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Jack?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
And Dana, aye. And we are now in closed session. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Right at 8:39. Right, and you got all that, right? So then I do it from here, right? Okay.
Well, we have to go to another. We have to exit out of here.
We exit out of here. Yes, we do. And then we come back to this, correct? 7:30 or the 7 p.m. email? I'm joking. I'm joking.
It's the second
I know.
regular school board
Hey,
meeting
hey,
invitation.
I have a microphone in my hand, I'm ready to talk.
Dan, I love the earrings.
And it's not like we don't have them, you know, like
Hey, we're,
part of our budget.
Oh, I think we are.
we might be.
Yeah,
Not sure.
Oh, I didn't.
they're
Oh.
muted. Yeah, but we can still hear you.
Okay, so, and I'll, so we closed at 9:07. We're now on open, right? Someone will make a motion and I'll keep track of that.
Are we live, guys? We are. Okay. Somebody go ahead. Whoever is still there.
I move to approve the stipulated. I approve the stipulated reduced contract for services to Dousman Transportation.
So moved.
Lisa Hines, second.
Jack,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Steve,
No.
Lisa.
Aye.
And Dana, aye. Motion carries. Okay, then I move to adjourn at 9:10 p.m.
9:10. And we take
Second.
Awesome, thank you.
so that's
Jack,
Dana and Lisa, right?
Aye.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, Steve,
Aye.
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
Dana, aye. And we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Thank you. Thank you guys for.
So action on the motion was Steve, and who seconded the motion?